gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast. We have a very special guest today. She has joined us before. It feels like it was a lifetime ago. We were lucky enough to see her speak at Brendan Burchard's High Performance Academy, and she absolutely crushed it. She is a physical therapist, a speaker, the co-host of the Optimal Body Podcast, and the creator of the Mobility Method. We are sitting down with the one and only Dr. Jen Esker. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. We appreciate being able to sit down with you again. To this day, you are still one of my favorite interviews just from the aspect of you are the person you see on social media. And a lot of times that's not the case. So when Alan said we were going to do this, I was genuinely excited. And my first question is this, and we can't take it easy off the bat. We're going to go right into it. So what season of life are you in right now? What season of life are you evolving from? And what season of life do you think is next for you?
Oh man. Okay. So what season of life am I in right now? Honestly, expansion. So much new has happened. Even in quarantine, I got engaged in quarantine, started a podcast in quarantine. We're expanding our entire membership. So it's just, there's a lot of expansion happening, a lot of new, a lot of learning, a lot of lessons, but it's been so incredible and such a blessing through the overwhelm of taking on a lot and taking on all of these things that it's just new for me. And it's honestly been so exciting. Dom, my fiance, and I, also a doctor of physical therapy, have been able to step in, and creating this podcast together has been so fun to have someone who not only knows me, but also speaks the same language as me in terms of what we believe about the body and all of that. And it's just been so fun to continue to see how we're coming together in shaping business and partnership and life, and what we're talking about beyond just business, and what we want to create as a partnership truly together. So it's so incredible. Like it's what I've always dreamed about, and it's actually happening. So it's really incredibly exciting, and I'm so honored. And then it was the season that I'm moving out of, right? And that season really is a lot of healing. So last year, I allowed myself to just take a year of healing. I literally felt like I was doing no work. People would always tell me like, oh, you're still doing so much. And I'd be like, really? Because compared to what I was doing before, I'm not doing anything. I'm allowing myself to travel. I'm allowing myself to be with friends, to enjoy myself. I was going on retreats. I was really just doing the inner work to heal. And I truly felt like as much as I wanted to show up and work, and as much as I wanted to serve, I knew I couldn't be inauthentic in that. And there was only so much that I could push before I was going to push beyond my limits. So I allowed myself to really pull back and be like, it's okay if I make less. It's okay if I'm not doing all the challenges and launches and everything. Like, because coming back to me is primary. And I had learned so many lessons, and it was just such a amazing time to feel like I have this opportunity to heal and be able to do that. So it was really amazing. And the season I'm moving into is, again, from this expansion, I would say it's abundance, and being able to have all of the pieces kind of starting to fall together and see what that can expand into and continue to grow, and have these different pieces in personal life and business life actually mesh and come together and, grow.
Did you decide that Alan and I did this at the beginning of this quarantine, the COVID thing? We said, like, we are going to come out of this better. Like, there is no way we can't. We have to. Was that a conscious decision for you? Was that your intention throughout? Or is that something that kind of like presented itself?
I would say it just presented itself. All of life for me has always been just like, okay, what is feeling like it's being called to next? What should I do? Like, the mobility method didn't come because I was like, I know how I can make a lot of money. It came because, it was like, well, everyone's following me on social media, and they're seeing my videos, but that's not actually helping. And how can I actually help? And it was just this evolution of listening and being okay to shift and evolve into what was necessary and what was coming up that I saw and could take the opportunity to step into and help. And so with Dom going from having so many personal clients in person for a physical therapist to now quarantine happened and he lost a lot of clients, and so he started shifting into my business more. And the more that he shifted in, the more honestly the more work I got, because then he was like answering things faster than I could keep up with. But it was amazing to be able to be like, wow, now that I have a partner that's helping me, I can actually get to these things that I never get to. And so it just kind of became, stepping into new projects, stepping into things I haven't gotten to or I haven't finished or I've been pushing off or whatever it may be. And so without intentionally trying to be like, I got to do a lot and I'm going to take this on, it's literally just been what's coming out of our partnership together.
So Kevin and I just did an episode this past week, and I think this is synchronistic a bit because in the preamble, we talked a little bit about your intuition, and we talked about making decisions with your heart and then using your mind to strategize about them. And so for you, you mentioned kind of taking some time off to recenter, refocus, to really listen. And I was with my girlfriend recently, and I asked her a simple question, which was, what pulls the most? Out of all the pulls on your energy, on your attention, and that sort of intuitive whisper, like which one pulls the strongest for your heart's desire? And I think that's a question we should all be asking ourselves consistently. So for you, how did you know to take that step back? And then what's interesting is you just said that you're in abundance and manifesting your dreams, whether it be your intimate relationship, your business, your podcast, all that stuff. And I think that that's like very clear, at least from our point of view, byproduct of that time you took off. So for the listeners, how can they learn how to trust that, even though they don't always have to push, like maybe I preach a little too much?
Yeah, and I think that's where women and men differ, because I can even look at Dom working 24/7 and I'm like, bro, I need to relax a bit. Like, I need to chill, where he can go a little bit more honestly than I can. And with that, he comes his regimented practices and his self-work and his things that he's doing every morning, every night to really hone in on his ability to take on so much throughout the day. But for me, I feel like it needs to be sprinkled in throughout the day. I can't just do a powerful morning routine and a powerful night routine and be like, now I'm going to stick through this throughout the day. And I find this so similarly for women, we need to ebb and flow with how our day is moving and be okay and be in the acceptance that it's not going to be perfect. And what is perfect? And what does that even mean? And why are we building up these expectations in our head? Like, yes, you can have a goal and you can have this intention into what you want to put. But if you're putting your intention into that, understand that it's going to come with listening. It has to. And for me, that meant, when I had an incident where my intuition really screamed at me, where I was kind of pushing it back before, and I was allowing myself to just be like, I don't know what this means, so I'm just going to push into work, and I don't know what this feels like, and I can't make sense of it right now, so all I'm going to do is work. All I'm going to do is control what I can control, because I didn't know how to listen to my intuition. I didn't know how to control that. Or not control it, but allow it to be seen and heard. But I would say from that process, I got shingles. And it wasn't because of the work I was pushing into. It was because of the personal life I wasn't addressing. And it was because of me pushing my intuition so far down that I wasn't allowing myself to trust what it was trying to tell me. And so once I finally got my slap in the face from the universe of listening to my intuition, it was such a gift, because it literally felt like in that moment a sense of freedom. Like, oh my gosh, there's been something in me that's been screaming to be heard, but I haven't trusted that. And now I can actually say, I can trust that feeling. I can trust that gut reaction. I can trust that uncertainty, and I'm not crazy for it. I'm not, I think a lot of women do feel crazy. Like, I don't feel like this is right, but I'm being told that I should do this. I'm being told that I should do that, or I should show up a certain way, rather than just listening and accepting and going into that. And once I was able to like really be like, oh my gosh, my intuition was correct, I can trust myself, which is such a valuable tool. Like, this is everything. Being able to come back and trust you is everything, because then it takes the judgment off of anything else. It takes the judgment off of what's right, what's wrong, who's right, who's wrong. And it's just like, this is not for me, and that's okay. And being able to be in the acceptance of it has been everything. And so when I had that, I knew that my journey was going to come with a lot of waves, because it was, 4.5 years of really not listening to myself and pushing it down. And so being hit hard and having a healing journey to go through of, for me, it came with a lot of, I was coming out of something that I had been betrayed. And so there was a lot of mental things that I just needed to work through. And I knew that it would come with triggers. I knew that it would come with moments of happiness and moments of tears. And rather than judging those incidences, I knew that I had to ride the waves of whatever experience happened, whether it was anger, whether it was sadness, whether it was happiness, whether it was I feel full into work mode and I'm going to lean in, or I need to sit back and I need to chill for a minute. And I needed to ride those waves and observe what my experience was, where the triggers were, where I was still working through mentally, where I was not forgiving myself, where all of these things were happening, in order to get to the other side of feeling like now I can lean in and actually serve people and show up huge. Granted, I didn't stop showing up. I didn't stop working. It just didn't look the way that it did before. And I allowed that to be okay, because at the end of the day, what am I doing it for? I'm doing it to help people. And to live a fulfilled life. For me, success is being happy in every area of my life. And it's not just a house. It's not just a car. It's not just a amount in my bank account, but it's truly feeling internally fulfilled. And so I knew that I could step back and be okay, which I moved to clothes on the water. And it's like, how can you complain about that? So there was so much that I was able to say, what is truly real for me and what do I need in this moment? And I will tell you, when I took that year and allowed myself to go through the journey, to be open, to be myself, to be real, to say whatever I needed to say and not allow myself to feel bad about it, I got to the other side, which is crazy. And for everyone, it will move through in a different way, right? But for me, I literally, I said this in January, before quarantine, before everything happened. And I said, like, I'm waking up feeling like I'm ready to take on the day. Like, I am ready to work hours on end. I'm like finally feeling fueled in this work energy more than I was last year. And it came from not force, but allowing time and the waves to ride the journey of being able to be there, like internally be there. And it's a hard thing to explain unless you allow yourself and trust yourself.
Jen, did you have to, and we're going deep here, did you have to re-hone your intuition after, because I think we're all guilty of this. I always say there's two answers,
sure.
Easy one and the right one, right? And a lot of times we take the easy one because it's easy. But after you were betrayed, I'm sure you probably felt like, some responsibility or some guilt maybe, because it was like, I knew this was going to happen. What was the process of like forgiveness for you? Because I think that's where so many people get stuck, is like not being able to forgive themselves, which is definitely one of the first steps.
Yeah, that's everything. So for me, I sought help. I talked to people. I reached out for support. I did not do my healing journey alone by any means. I was constantly surrounded by girlfriends or from family. I I don't think I was ever alone the first month. I had people who just held space for me, who weren't trying to make it better or fix anything, but just allowed me to be me in that moment. And that is the best thing that you can do for someone. And then I had coaches. So I had Krista Petty, who's more of a somatic therapist. So I'd call her and we would go through where it was coming up in my body. And I would literally get off the phone with her and be like, oh, a weight just got lifted off my chest. And I went to Christine Hassler's workshop and I would talk to her as well. I went to Krista Petty's Sacred Bliss retreat too, with just women. And there was a lot of processing and healing for myself that, just allowing that to ride its journey and not judge it. And one of the things that I really appreciated that I got out of Christine Hassler's retreat was that, one, we did an anger burn. So this is where a group of like 100 women are in releasing anger.
Is it a bonfire type situation of like old photos and stuff?
Oh no, it is physical. And so that's where I don't think women get that allowance a lot of times to say,
Right.
in appropriate moments and in an appropriate setting, release anger. It is so healthy. Men, whether it's watching a sport and yelling at the TV and making gestures, or going to play a contact sport, and really like they are for some reason more allowed to go into these instances of releasing anger and having that be appropriate. But if a woman does that, it is not seen as appropriate. And so how can you cultivate an environment where that can be appropriate? So Christine Hassler did this at her workshop, and it was literally, even when she was talking about it, I could feel the blood boiling, like, oh, this is something that I need. And then as it was happening, I could literally feel like energy going through my arms of release, and being able to have that space to do that and to allow your body to do that, allow no judgment, like release, say whatever you need to, hit whatever you need to, like do it. It was one of the most healing things that I've ever had. And so from that, for my birthday a month later, I took all my girlfriends to something called Rage Ground in LA. And this is where you're able to take just a lot of like steel bats or whatever it may be, and you break stuff. And I had them put on the Beyonce track from Yellow. Is that her album, right?
I'm not sure, but I'm picturing like in 300, but like a group of women with these bats right now.
I always wanted to do that, so I'm curious to hear.
Oh, it was so fun. I mean, that wasn't as like crying and emotional. That was more fun with a group of women, but still like allowing these women to have the allowance of like hit something, go hard, release, scream, whatever you need to do. And knowing that that is part of healing as well. We cry, we laugh, like why isn't anger a part of it as well? And that is a way to move energy through the body. And so having that allowance was so huge. And then one of the other things Christine Hassler did as well, she gave us a prompt, and it said, I forgive myself for. And it's as easy as that. And so every day, waking up and saying, I forgive myself for. And, going through this whole entire process, journaling was something that was so huge for me. And I actually kept a journal by my bed. So if I had any reoccurring dreams, if I had something that was continuously coming up, I would start journaling about it, especially dreams that I'm just like, why was that happening? Or what does that mean? And often I forget my dreams super fast, super easily. So if I had a journal by my bed, I could then just go right into it and just start journaling right away. And you don't realize until you're really doing it, because I was never a constant journaler. Like I would do it here and there, and I would have my morning routines kind of doing it, but I never stuck to it. But during this healing phase, especially in the beginning, it was something that, again, I didn't have to do every day. If it wasn't a pressure on myself or a demand on myself, it was an allowance. It was a release. And so having it by my bed was that allowance to say, okay, this is what happened. Let me write about it. And when you start writing about it, you just like, oh my gosh, like you just start realizing your hand goes somewhere, your brain goes somewhere that you didn't even realize was underneath the surface. And so it allowed me to unpack a lot. It allowed me to continue to observe and become aware of where a lot of triggers or emotions were coming from and stuck, and allowed me to continue to move through and process and talk with someone if I needed to, or just process on my own so that I could move through it. You don't get over pain, you move through it, and you become real with it. And I think that is the most powerful thing that anyone can start to take away, is rather than trying to force it away, you gotta experience it and allow yourself to move through it.
So on the last time we interviewed you, you talked a little bit about in the past looking in the mirror, learning how to love yourself. I was with a client of mine and she was having trouble with self-doubt and self-confidence. And I remember asking her, like, okay, please name 5 things about your physical appearance that you love. And it was like really hard for her to come up with any. But I said, well, I bet you if I asked you to name your flaws, you could pick them out like that. And it's like, you wonder why you're not feeling good when it's like, this person is, from my perspective, drop dead gorgeous. Everyone else thinks she is. And so I know this is a common theme that I've noticed with my female clients. And honestly, men struggle with this too. I know I have in the past. Like, I could pick out flaws all day, but what's good is always available. So is what's bad. But it's what we're focusing on that we're going to feel. And so you used to talk about how you were beating yourself up in front of the mirror. And I know that a lot of our female listeners and male listeners too struggle with this. So how do we pick up on when we're talking poorly to ourselves? And how do we start really keeping the promises we make to ourselves from that allowance that you're describing? Because I often say, if you had a friend who broke as many promises to you as you've broken to yourself, how much would you value that friendship? And it's like, we all have that friend that keeps letting us down. What if we're doing that to ourselves all the time? So how do you honor your own integrity? Because that's a lot of what this is about.
Totally. I think in the beginning of the process, it's a scary thing to get that real with yourself. So asking for support and asking for accountability in it from someone you trust, someone you know loves you, and someone you know has your back was one of the greatest gifts that I gave myself in that journey. So when someone pointed out that I was talking negative and poor to myself, and it not only like, I was like, okay, yeah, so that's how I get ready in the morning. It wasn't a big deal to me. But until they said it creates a negative environment around you, and I realized the words that I had impacted other people, that's when I was like, okay, this gets to shift, because it's no longer just about me and what I'm saying to myself. It's about what I'm allowing for other people to say for themselves and what I'm making okay. And so once that hit, then it was like, okay, I think it's hard, especially in the beginning, to have someone say, what are things that you love about yourself, unless you're practicing it on your own. It kind of puts someone on the spot. And if it's so new for them, you've been taught and conditioned for so long to be humble and not say anything, nice about yourself. Essentially cutting yourself down is more humble. And so and especially for how I grew up, so for a woman who's now being presented with this, it's hard. And my first step in trying to overcome that was just saying thank you when someone gave me a compliment. That was hard for me. I would always say no, or deflect, or no, that's you, or da da da. I never said thank you, and I never received someone's compliment. And so I would say the first step in trying to get someone to shift is saying, can you just please, for me, receive my compliment and just say thank you? And that is already going to start to create a shift in how they're starting to look at themselves. And then after that, they have to decide for themselves, this isn't the environment I want to create or allow for my friends or my family or my young ones if I have kids. And so how can I just start writing 2 to 3 things I love about myself and have it personal, where no one else has to see it or no one else has to hear it, but I'll just write it. Even if I don't believe it, I'm just going to start writing stuff and we'll see what happens. And so I gave myself a 30-day mark. And along those 30 days, I also asked for support. So I went to my mom, who I heard talk negative about herself all the time, and I didn't realize that that's where I probably got it from until someone pointed it out for me. And I asked her, hey, this is not okay. I want to catch myself. So can I ask you to help me? If you hear me say anything negative about myself, can you catch that and make me reverse it? And I'm going to do the same for you. And then I went to all my girlfriends who also are more humble in tearing themselves down and asked for the same support. And so eventually, not only building it in myself and writing it down, but reaching out for support in those that I felt safe and comfortable with doing that, then helps to allow it to trigger out. Now, if someone or a coach were to ask me, what I love about myself, now I can feel comfortable saying it. But I think it's also a process, and it's hard to put, especially a woman, on the spot who hasn't been taught these things, right? And it's been so conditioned the other way to not brag about yourself. That's
especially
bragging.
If you are gorgeous, because when you are that beautiful, the last thing people want to hear is how beautiful.
Right.
It's an interesting thing. I've found
that
this.
Might think you're arrogant. That's the thing.
Right.
How dare yeah, it's I love getting it from somebody else's perspective, because again, I'm a dude, like, there's a reason I have a hat on right now. My hair is out of control. But like, if I didn't have a hat, I would just rock it, because it is what it is. But like, it's clear to me, we talked to you like a year and a half ago, probably. It's clear that you have grown exponentially. How do you know personally when you're growing? For Alan and myself, it's happy smiles and then sad tears. Like, rinse and repeat. What is the process for you, Jen?
Oh gosh, the process is just continued compassion. I don't know. And asking for support. How do I know how I'm showing up, or if I'm actually sticking to the things that I'm telling myself, unless I'm telling someone else too? And I'm so blessed to have a partner that wants to walk that journey with me and is open to being that support for me. But if it wasn't my partner, I would ask a friend. So before Dom, I would have weekly accountability calls with one of my best friends. And yeah, they were more so business related calls that we were holding each other accountable to, but it's also, that's integrity in all ways. So that's integrity in how I'm showing up and if I'm actually sticking to that. And again, asking for support in terms of who's around me and making these guidelines of, you are calling me out if I say anything like this, and I'm calling you out if you say anything like this. So then if I all of a sudden start to revert back, I get caught on it. I get called on my own stuff. So I think being willing to ask for support and know that feedback is not positive or negative. It's feedback. That's all it is. The way that you decide to interpret it is what you make it and the judgment that you make it, but it's not positive or negative. If someone is saying this is how it's showing up, that's how it's showing up for them in their own perspective. Whether you take that on or not is up to you, but it's an opportunity to see, okay, what's not working well? How am I showing up that I'm not becoming the most effective person that I want to present to people? And it's just about what's working, what's not working, and how can I continue to shift into how I want to be seen, how I want to show up, because I know who I am on the inside. And if a different perspective is coming off of that, then I know that I'm not really being my most authentic self, because then I'm not being seen for who I am. And I want to be sure that I can always continue to show up as that. And I'm not perfect in it. I don't know what that means again. It's just continual feedback. It's continual support. It's continual accountability, and making it known not only for myself, but for other people to know, this is who I am. This is who I want to be. Can you hold me accountable to that?
One of the things that I think a lot of our listeners struggle with, I know I do very much, is asking for that support. So I've told Kevin in the past, like, tell me that I told you to tell me. You know what I mean? Because that's the only way I'll listen, because I'm stubborn sometimes. And I do that with my girlfriend too. Like, remind me that I said to tell me about this feedback.
So I can't yell at you for saying,
Right. So how did you get so comfortable with this idea of asking for feedback and asking for help, really? Because that's another theme I'm noticing is like you are really leaning into your tribe. So really two questions. One, how do you know that your tribe is actually supporting you and has your best interest at heart? Because I think the second question is a dangerous game without that. And then the second question is, how did you get in the habit of consistently asking for feedback and help? Because it sounds like even from when we met you to now, it seems like you ask for help a lot more consistently and you feel like you're working in harmony. And I had the privilege of talking to you and your fiance for a time about your podcast as well. It seems like you two work in such harmony. And I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, what's behind the scenes of all that for our listeners?
You know, I don't know what started what, but I will say that I've had a very good background, and I'm extremely, extremely blessed and fortunate for the environment that I grew up in. So even if I've evolved in the last year and a half, I had family support all growing up, and not only immediate family support, but I had extended family support. So my cousins were my best friends. I saw my aunts and uncles almost weekly. Like my grandparents, we were all super close to. So I have had this support that I could fall back on at any time, and I knew that people had my back. And I think that's something that not everyone gets to experience. So it's hard to know that you can trust tribe, that you can fall back on people, and that you can have that safety net, essentially. I had that. And so cultivating friendships and tribe and all of that, it's evolved for sure. I think especially when what's really shifted for me is when you go through a hard time and you go through something that's a real experience in your life that really shifted things for you, like it shifted for me. And what I saw in that was who really showed up for me and who was too afraid to be there for the real stuff. They want to support me in the fluff of business. They want to support me when I'm happy and when I'm good, but they don't really want to deal with when I'm upset and when I'm not feeling well. And I'm sorry, I learned how to cultivate my tribe in that experience. And it doesn't make them wrong or bad. It doesn't make them not my person. It just means that you're not going to be a part of my inner tribe. You're not going to be a part of my inner circle because I know that you can't handle things when it's real for me and when it's ugly for me and when it doesn't always show up in the best, most working, effective way. Because when someone's hurting and when someone's lost, I guarantee they're not showing up 100% as the most effective and efficient themselves. They're hurting. There's a lot happening there. And if someone isn't willing to walk those waves with me and hold space in those times, then I know that they're just not going to be a part of my inner circle. They can be a part of different circles. So I learned how to kind of expand my circles of tribe in that. And you only get to cultivate this inner tribe if you're willing to show up you, right? In any situation. If you're willing to say when you're not feeling good, when something is painful, when something's not going right, when you're able to show up and not go crazy, work on that stuff on your own. But like if you're able to come forward and be vulnerable and have it be scary, then you start to cultivate your tribe. Who's going to be there? Who's going to hold space? And who can walk the waves of supreme happiness and joys and accomplishments, and also hold space, not fixing you, but hold space when things are not really working as well and things are a lot harder. And building that tribe for me has helped to just continue to strengthen the ways in which I know where I can be vulnerable and I know where I'm not. I know where who I can go to for certain things and I know where I can't. And that's okay. And it's, again, dropping the judgment of it all has been so freeing because it doesn't make me right or wrong. It doesn't make the other person right or wrong. It doesn't even make the other person who I felt betrayed from right or wrong. It just is. And it just is a part of the process. And so when I allow that to be what's most important, I can fall back and I can really rely on tribe and ask for support in whenever I need to. And I really showed up in that, I will say, from the very beginning in my personal relationship, who's now my fiance too. So I was extremely honest in the beginning because we met very early where I was still doing a lot of healing. And I told him, this is who I am. This is what I'm going through. I'm going to have triggers that have nothing to do with you, but it's going to affect me probably because of something you did that you had no idea. and I still am healing, and you in no way need to walk this healing journey with me. And so I made it very clear up front of who I am and where I'm at in my life. And so I cultivated this relationship of what I want and the support and the feedback that I can have from how I walked into it in the very beginning and being 100% me there.
A lot of what we're talking about is like deep, deep inner work. And most people don't do that just because, you know, like you don't wake up and say like, you know what, I'm going to dig into my shit today and see what's up with me. So my guess is you have some sort of legacy, some sort of impact. You're doing this for a greater reason. And this is, I could be totally wrong, so tell me if I am, but you're doing this for a greater reason than just to feel good in the moment, possibly. If you could only be known or remembered for one thing, like what is it that you're playing for?
Oh, I'm playing to be remembered as the light, as the example that people can be themselves around, feel comfortable, feel seen, feel supported, and just be a light that holds space in whatever that looks like for someone. You know, one of the biggest impacts when my grandma passed away, she had people spilling out the church. So there's people on the outsides, no Instagram following, no nothing, but she made a huge impact on people just for how she showed up for people. And sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's harsh, but she was real, she was open, she held space for anyone, and she was a light. And that is what I want to cultivate for whoever I pass, and however people pass through my content or me in person or whatever it may be. I want to be that space, that light, that opening that people feel comfortable around, and that people feel like, okay, I see how it could thrive. I see how this is possible.
For the listeners, before Alan goes, like just listen to how crystal clear she is, and she knows what has to happen in order for that to be accomplished. I feel a very familiar feeling talking to you again, because it's the same energy of like, I'm just calm and relaxed because your presence is calming and relaxing. So it's just understand how crystal clear she is on her purpose and her passion and her mission, and she's willing to do what it takes to get there. So I want to commend you for that. And this is always fun. You're super easy to talk to.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is so good. This is so good. So one of the things that I set the intention to ask you, because I was in the shower earlier and I was just having all these thoughts, and I was like, okay, what do I want to learn? What do I want the listeners to learn? And one of the things that I've found most freeing in my own life is misunderstandings that now I understand. And I've been saying this a lot lately: of all the things in life to get understanding; of all the things in life to get rid of entitlement. So when it comes to this journey, you're an entrepreneur, you run a business, you just started a podcast, you have a fiance, you're a doctor of physical therapy, you're all of these things, and you're extremely successful in many regards. And what it seems like from a holistic standpoint, but you're also fulfilled. What was the misunderstanding that you had about success early on that maybe some of our listeners or Kevin or myself still have, that now you feel like you understand a little better and you wish you knew earlier?
You know, I would say it's just the validation of who I'm talking to, what circles I'm around. Like, I think this idea of, you know, the 5 people that you're surrounded around, da, 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 da. Yes. And it's not because of a certain status. So if you're looking for 5 people because of the status that you think that they bring, I would be looking somewhere else. Because that's still a search for internal validation then. And that was a huge thing for me. Like, I realized that people would just show up to birthday parties, would show up to support someone because they wanted to get to the next level of what circle I could be in, or who I could be photographed with, or who I could, and it just feels icky to me now to have that experience. And I've met people who are way high and who are maybe don't have an Instagram following or whatever it may be. And I've also been in rooms with people who they meet me and they're like, okay, cool, and then kind of pass by. And then they realize either who I was dating or how many Instagram followers I have, and they all of a sudden come back in and want to talk. That's icky.
Right.
And there's still some inner work you got to do because you're not okay with who you are, and you feel like there's another thing that you need to be validated for. And so watch when you're saying the 5 people that you want to surround yourself with. Make sure that they're people that actually see you, not see your success, not see your numbers, not see your bank account, but actually see you as a human. And you can still be reaching to be at that table with Oprah. You could still be reaching to be, in the room with people that you admire. I don't think that's neglected here, but make sure that the people who actually have your back have your back. And I realized that a lot because when I did move through the betrayal, those people didn't have my back. They weren't really, they would show up to a birthday party, they would show up to support me at an event, but they didn't really have my back when it mattered. And so understanding that it's more about this whole person of who you are so that you can feel free within the body, because this will allow you to thrive. It's going to allow you to work out strong. It's going to allow you to do business and be on calls all day long. It's going to allow you to do other things when you actually have the support of feeling seen for who you are and not who you want people to think you are.
I've been having this internal battle of like, I want to be happy, and I'd love to get your take on this, like, no judgment. I'm just curious to what you think of it. But I want to be happy for people who are like TikTokers and like they shake their butts and they run around in bikinis. Like, I genuinely do want to be happy, but I think in my mind, like, you're not that. I don't think you're that happy though, because you're adding value through physical therapy, through exercise, through podcasts, through self-love, through all of these things. And I think at the end of the day, like, some value we're adding is just visual or pleasure. And I don't know, like, I get that icky feeling. Like, I got off TikTok because I couldn't do it. Like, I can't be seeing that all day. But I just, sometimes I wonder, like, is there a means to an end for that? Or is that like, I can add value this way, I look good, I'm going to do that. Like, I don't know if there's a question there, but I felt compelled to share that because I think you do it right. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people, like, Alan and I resonate so highly. We've met some people, and like, the closer you get to them, the realer they get. And you realize very quickly, like, this person is not in it for the same reason, or, that sort of thing. And I just wonder, social media has really opened my eyes to like human behavior. And I'll probably never have the answer to a lot of it, but I was curious to what, I'm rambling. I was curious to what you thought about, like, when you're scrolling through social media and you come across that, what do you think about?
For me, I try to drop the judgment around it because I don't know what that person is going through. I don't know what makes them happy. I don't know the support that they have. I don't know anything, right? I don't know what they get from posting a booty photo or posting, just images of their body. And for them, it could be freeing. It could be like, I am so in acceptance of me and I want to show that that is so beautiful and you can do that. So I don't know. It could be just look at my body, look at and validate me. Or it could be I am standing so powerful in whatever body type I have and I don't care who judges me. And I want to show that that is possible. So it's so hard to put a one answer, but I would say, again, it goes back to trusting and listening to your own intuition. And it's, if this doesn't make me feel good, if I am seeing this person over and over again and I feel, and I get gossipy after, and I get negative after, and I start judging myself after, or whatever it may be, if you notice that there's a negative outcome for you in your own life, then it's probably something that you're feeling like this isn't good energy for me to see, for me to be around. And removing yourself and having that awareness and that self-awareness allows you to just say, I'm just going to trust that for me. And I'm going to continue to see why. Is it because I'm judging myself and I don't feel good enough? Is it because, all of these different things? You can continue to go into the why as to where's that really coming from for me? But in that process, you also don't need to continue to put yourself in this place that you're going to feel triggered or negative or have this like visceral reaction to things. And that's what I realized for me too. It's like, I had to realize in the very beginning, like if someone said, honestly, even my ex's name, I would get this visceral, like, ugh, like a food I didn't like or something. I would have a reaction to it. And I had to realize that I need to remove myself from conversations or from the content or from anything around that, because that negative energy that comes up for me is, again, negative energy that I'm allowing other people to feed into. And so realizing I get to continue to observe that, and I did, and I continue to like dig in, why does that happen? Why is that the first visceral reaction that's happening? But I also don't want to continue to spread that negativity out to other people. So I'm just going to remove it right now completely so that other people aren't affected by it, because it's not theirs to take on. It's not theirs to judge. It's my own to judge and to see what's needed and what's necessary in the growth. So I think it's continuing to trust, and every person is individual. And if it doesn't feel good for you, trust that. It's okay. Millions of people might like it, and there's tons of people in this world with millions of followers. And if you don't agree, that's okay. Like, that's not for you. And there's so many other people.
We say this all the time. There's no right or wrong, but there is right for you. Yeah. And that's so fire. And sometimes you got to explore both ends to understand what's right for you. Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
I was going to say, the reason I asked is because I subconsciously, I knew you'd have a better perspective than I. Like, because I think I judge. And honestly, straight up, I think I'm a little bit jealous. I do. That, like, I work very hard and I want to add value in the best way. And sometimes it's like, oh, they're winning. And I think that's a me thing, though. And I really, really appreciate that perspective.
But here's the thing. There's a lot of clinicians, I guarantee, who hate me for the same reason.
Right.
Oh, she's just out there looking cute and posting these stupid mobility things, and she has all these people she shouldn't, like, who is this influencer, this physical therapist? She's not even helping people. I guarantee, because of the same reason that you just said, they're jealous that I actually have this influence that when you come down to the root of it, they're jealous. Why can't I influence people the same way? Why don't I have as big of an audience?
So I have they talk to you if they would be.
What was that?
I wonder if they talk to you. Like, I get zero, and I'm sure, Alan, you feel the same, zero entitlement from you. Like, zero anything negative from you. And what if I got the chance to talk to the 16-year-old TikToker and they were like you, where they're like, oh, for the first time ever, I feel confident in a bikini. Like, I would feel terrible about myself feeling that way, probably. So, okay, you're making me do some digging, Jim.
Well, that's good. We're all here to think. I love it. It's interesting. I have a client who's a huge fan of yours. She runs a physical therapy clinic down in Florida. And I just wanted to say that because you're having such a big impact. And it's interesting because, like, she loves your content. Like, you inspire her so much. I'm going to be sending this episode to her for sure.
8-minute warning. Just
8-minute warning.
Yeah. So, Doc Jen, tell us, I want to make sure that you get to plug everything, and if we have time, we'll ask, but tell us about the podcast. Tell us about, I know you have an app now, like, you're all over the place. So tell us about what you have going on and where people can find out more about all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, the podcast has been super fun because it's our way of trying to make it easy and digestible for people to actually understand these clinical terms, these diagnoses that get thrown at us from doctors, and really be able to allow people to, one, understand where it could be coming from, understand what they could do in their own bodies, and feel empowered to take this knowledge and be like, oh, it's not so scary. And now I have some tools that I can use, and I know how I can start to look at my body. So, it's been just such a fun journey to do the podcast. Oh, and then the app, yes, Doc Jen Fit, the Optimal Body app. I do have, which is essentially like my Instagram, but organized. So it's like ankles, back, breathing, knee pain. Like if you don't want to just scroll through my Instagram and find the answer, I guarantee I've posted a video about it before, 100%. And you can find it actually organized within the app. And also, if you're a part of my membership, the Optimal Body membership, which has mobility flows, functional HIIT workouts, core stability workouts, mindset tools, in order to kind of continue to build that awareness and like actual visual cueing for me, because I do the workout with you, then that is also accessible within the app. But that's, the Optimal Body, and then the mobility method, self-assessment, find out where your mobility restrictions are within your own body, take the time and the tools in your own hands. And I think that's it for right now.
If you guys do not follow DocGenFit on Instagram, you need to. Your content is absolute fire. The production value is great. You can do more. You guys can do crazy gymnastic stuff that we could never do. I shouldn't say we could never do, but cannot currently do. One thing I will say is, last question, I just want to ask it real quick. Super fast answer. I have the 5 fundamental pillars of natural fitness: sleep, hydration, nutrition, training, and mobility. Okay, mobility is a big thing for you. I believe if we can connect what the hard work is to the thing that people desire more effectively, and lower the intimidation factor. Like, I don't know anything about cars, so when my car breaks, I freak out. I have an aversion to it. So how do we lower the intimidation factor about mobility real quick? And then how do we connect it to what they actually want so that they do it?
Mobility is not the splits. It's not, that could be a portion if that's what you want to gain, but it's really just the ability to start at the foundation. We come out of the womb and, we build upon different patterns within our body. We literally bring our feet back and suck on our toes before we start to crawl and before we start to walk and stand. It's a developmental milestone. So why do we forget about the developmental milestones that can actually support our body? So no wonder that we get out of it. We go from sitting on the floor when we're really young to sitting in desks, and then continue sitting in desks the rest of our lives for even longer periods during the day, and we don't move as much. So we lose this mobility within our body. But literally, if you want to get stronger, you want to push those weights overhead, you want to squat lower, you have to have the initial mobility within the body. And beyond just that, if you want to be able to, play with kids when you're older, get down on the floor, get up, just being able to get down on the floor and stand up is a fundamental thing that a lot of people take for granted, even in their 30s. No, who wants to actually sit on the floor? Because it's going to take a struggle to stand back up for most people. And so it's so easy as like, how can I just create more movement throughout my day? Instead of just sitting at my desk, how can I sit cross-legged and work at my coffee table? How can I, create different spaces where I'm actually promoting more movement, more reach, more range of motion within my body more throughout the day? And it can be as simple as that.
Fire. Wow.
Fire.
Wow.
What was the stat that you said if you can't stand up from the floor without using your toes? When you said that at High Performance Academy, I was like, wait. I hope I can do this right now, because I pride myself on being in shape. I can, but what was the stat?
Yeah, so there was like a study that was done out of Spain a while ago, and it was the sit to stand test. So if you can sit on the ground and then get back up without using your hands, without your knees, and without putting your hands on your legs or your knees, and just use your feet to stand back up, you score that on a scale from 1 to 10. So every time that you put a hand down, that you put a knee down, that you wobble when you stand, anything like that, you lose a point. So if you scored less than 8 points, then you're 6 times more likely to die in the next 6.5 years.
Jeez.
That's
a hardcore stat. I didn't remember that part.
I remember.
I remember I was able to do it though, but I was also panicking as well.
I was looking around and thinking, like, I wonder how many people, like, I used to do jujitsu. Like, that's how you get up at the end. You cross your legs and you stand up. But I was thinking, like, that is a simple test. Like, I challenge you, not if you're driving, but if you're watching or listening to this in a safe environment, try that. And maybe that's the feedback. Not good. It's not bad. It's feedback. But maybe that's what you need to download DocGenFit's app.
Also, try the toe sucking thing. No.
Don't try that. No. I can't do that.
I was gonna make it.
You gotta make it weird. I know. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for this. Again, it was as much of a pleasure as I expected, because it always is. We appreciate you. And honestly, I cannot wait to see the next couple of years for you, because you're changing and growing and you're impacting so much. And it's awesome to be able to see that.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
So good.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Doc Jen Fit. If you don't follow her, you should. We hope you enjoyed, and we will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.